Hey guys, Martial Arts Militia here. My name is Matthew. Today's video is going to be a motivation starter pack. So just a quick update for you guys. I am officially coming out of retirement. I left my job and I thought I would retire. So interest-free retirement, basically interest covers your expenses, so you technically don't have to work. And I've done this a couple times before. I usually only make it like 1 week before I get restless. This time I made it 2 weeks. I made it 2 weeks, staying at home all day. I platinumed 3 games. It was Tormented Souls, and then I platinumed Crow Country. This is a very good game, I like this. And then Tormented Souls 2. So that's what I did in the 2 weeks. Maybe I watched a movie, maybe I watched a TV show, but then eventually I was getting pretty restless and I would even say kind of depressed too, and I was like, oh, I need to start working again. So yes, I applied some places. It's pretty crazy though. People say that it's a good thing when you can retire, but I don't know, man. I just don't see it happening. Maybe I need more hobbies, but I really cannot. I don't know. I get sick of staying at home, so hopefully I hear back, just get back to working again. I could technically work part-time, but seeing how bored I got, I think I'll just go back to full-time. And sad news for my friends. I know I was talking a lot about going on vacation. Seemed like I needed one. I looked at like Cancun, the Bahamas, Hawaii, stuff like that, and you look at the cost and you go like, yep, I can afford it. But then you go, do I need it? So I talked myself out of it. Basically, I didn't go on vacation, but I probably should have. But like that's all the interest-free retirement, like training stuff. Like the mindset, which you're probably going to need financial therapy to get out of that way of thinking. Anyhow, a different subject. I pretty much shot all the guns that I wanted to shoot and test out. There's about 27 guns left, which hasn't been featured on the channel, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to let you guys decide which gun you want me to shoot next for the range report. So I'll have them arranged by caliber in the description box. You can just look at that, see which gun you want me to shoot. You can just make a comment saying you'd like me to shoot this gun at this, at the next range report, whatever. Don't spam it, please. You can just put a vote per video, so don't put like 10 of them on the same video. Just go to different kinds. I'm going to go ahead and put in my submission, so it's going to put him in the lead, but I'm voting for the Luger P08 artillery model. This is an Erfurt Luger. It's got the markings and everything. It came with a nickel magazine, which the owner said it isn't supposed to lock in, which I thought, okay, that's new. But I bought 2 aftermarkets, and interestingly enough, both aftermarkets will lock the magazine. No problem. And number 2, it's no problem. But the owner says the nickel wooden one is not supposed to. I wonder how that would work in battle. I'd be a little concerned, I would say. But yeah, I'm going to vote for this one. So if you guys want me to shoot this one, just vote for that. But if you want a different gun, you'll see in the description box, all 27. You can vote for whichever one you want me to shoot. So, different videos, don't comment 10 comments on the same video. Alright, so with those out of the way, I can now talk about our subject material. So motivation, something we all want to have, right? Sometimes it's a little difficult for us. Some have more than others, whatnot. Some you can train it too, that's one thing. Motivation is mostly governed by dopamine, and dopamine is a seeking hormone. So it's something to where it makes you want to seek the next thing. You run a mile and you did a pretty good job. Now you want to run 2 miles and that becomes too easy. Now you want to run 3 miles. It's supposed to make you keep going. That's how the system is based on. And there's a couple things you do which can help your motivation get higher, your dopamine get higher, and something you want to stay away from, which is going to be super stimuli, right? So just as a general improvement, I think that you should extend your natural fast. Everybody fasts when you sleep. Hopefully 8 hours, not my case, but hopefully you do. You're fasting for those 8 hours, you're not eating anything. okay? And so if you think about it, you can start for the next month to just wait 1 hour before you eat. Now you've gone to 9 hours. And then after a month, that becomes too easy, and then maybe you go 2 hours. So you got 10-hour fast every day, right? Because you're fasting every day. You're just delaying it for 1 more hour, right? And you can go high as you want. I've gone up to 19 hours. It was kind of my normal. Then I tried 23 hours. You gotta stuff all your food in 1 hour. That's pretty annoying, actually. And then I even tried 47 hours twice. That one I think was a little much. But certainly I think, 19 is workable. 23 is a little hard to work with. That's 1 meal a day, but you could technically do that. So of course, I guess you would say, why would you want to do that? Well, the body has 2 functions, 2 main functions. First one is digestion, so you eat and then your body digests the food. Nothing surprising there. Your body also can repair itself, which is interesting, but it doesn't do that as a priority. It prioritizes digestion first. So if you're eating all the time, your body's digesting all the time, you never repair, right? And so the idea is that when there's no food in your stomach, then your body will go on to autophagy. So it's going to look for cells that are damaged, broken down, mutilated, and then they will break them down, destroy them, then make a new one, right? So it's a pretty good self-repair system, except as I said, we almost never do it because we're eating all the time, right? And there's debates, some scientists will say that we're always doing autophagy, just at a really low level when you're eating. And some people say it doesn't happen at all unless you haven't eaten anything for 19 hours. So I guess we can't agree on that, but I think we can agree that if the body has a self-repair system, destroying broken cells and replacing them, that's a pretty good skill to have, some to use pretty often, right? So that's kind of the reason why we want to extend the fast, so that we're breaking down cells. Because cancer is essentially mutated cells, right? And then it replicates and it affects other cells, and that's cancer. So this is a pretty good thing to try to train, to get used to it more often. As I said, 19 was kind of my normal. I would do that pretty much at my behavioral health job. It was 19 hours fast every day. And I even pushed it to a dry fast where there was no water, which is debatable. Some people don't like that. Some people, I don't know. I thought it was okay. It was fine. If you're religious as well, fasting also helps with stronger demonic spirits, right? So in one of the 4 Gospels, Jesus gives his disciples the ability to get rid of demons, right? But there are some to where they weren't able to, and so Jesus had to do it. And then it's removed on the Bible. I don't know why. They removed it from Matthew 17:21 and Mark 9:29, where Jesus says that the stronger spirits are removed by prayer and fasting. So I'm not sure why they removed that, but they removed the fasting part. Then of course, for that I do recommend NKJV. It's the New King James Version, or the King James Version. I know everybody likes King James, but I watched the West House video and he pretty much explained how when you look at a word and what it means to us today, didn't mean what it meant back then. So that's why you probably don't want to read the King James Version. But the New King James Version, I do like that one. There's a lot of corrections that they made, like in the 10 Commandments where they say, thou shalt not kill, which is too general. It's correctly, thou shalt not murder, right? Because murder is to kill for the sake of killing. It's not killing to save somebody else, which was kind of like the misinterpretation, I think, in King James. And there's another one where it talks about I think they use the word Sheol, so it's like the Jewish, like the purgatory place, because it made it sound like one of the saints was in hell, and that doesn't make any sense, right? So little things like that, they really kind of just corrected it, I would say, in the New King James Version, so I do recommend that. I don't know about the other Bibles. I don't know. I've just always been put on King James, and then my pastor put me on New King James, so then I stay with that. Now, the next thing we want to do is that we want to down-regulate taste buds. So in the Western standard diet, our foods are very high fat, high sugar, high cholesterol, high salt, right? That's pretty much what we're kind of used to. And the body's a master of homeostasis and efficiency, which can work against us. So for example, efficiency works against us if you practice like a jab or a cross, right? And you practice the punch 100 times. The first 10 were probably pretty good. Once you got to like 50, 60, it was getting pretty bad. because as the body gets tired, it makes it more efficient, but that doesn't mean it's correct because you're being more sloppy with it, right? So, and that's efficiency. Now with homeostasis, the body wants to be in the same place. So if you have a regular diet, let's say you have a bad diet, and you stay with that for like 10 years, your body's going to treat that as normal. So when you introduce healthy foods, it's going to be like, no, I don't like this. This is new. You know what I mean? So you have to introduce these things slowly so the body doesn't recognize there's a difference and it accepts that as the new normal, right? I remember before, when I had a regular standard Western diet, that wheat bread, when I ate it, it tasted like dirt. I'm not kidding. That's exactly what it reminded me of. It tasted like dirt. It was terrible, right? And then as I improved my taste buds by just watching the sugar or the salt content, which is like 1.5 grams, maybe 2 grams. But once you look at foods, it's really easy to go over that. So you really have to watch the salt. But you know, coming down with sugar and cholesterol and things like that, when I really made the taste buds down regulated, I would have like a protein shake and it would taste like marshmallows. Or we had soy milk at the jail, which I think is just almond milk, and it tasted like vanilla. The ice cream tasted good. You know, so it really kind of messes with your taste buds. But just kind of look at things and just, you know, whatever your normal is, try to have a little bit less sugar, salt, and fat and cholesterol, you know, each month. And then as that becomes normal, then you can go even less and less. And that goes with foods too. You know, you want to add healthier foods. Don't just like replace the whole thing. Your body's going to, you know, reject it by homeostasis. Just a little bit by little bit, so it doesn't notice. And then months over time, it'll be your new normal and it won't be a problem. Another thing that can help too is if you don't smoke. I know a lot of people smoke. I know a lot of people vape and all that stuff. But smoking for sure reduces the number of taste buds. So that's just going to make it harder for you to do this. I don't know about vaping. I think the information is not out there because it's still new, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same idea. And with getting rid of smoking, you're looking at the tapering method. Out of the two methods for addiction removal, you're going to look at tapering because smoking is not as bad as methamphetamines and heroin, right? So you can kind of taper off that. Again, just a little bit by little bit. However cigarettes you go through in a day, just remove one, okay, for the whole month. And then next month, because it's going to be normal to you, remove 2 cigarettes. And eventually you just come down to not needing it at all over a long period of time. Small changes are permanent, which is what you want. Big changes are temporary. We don't want that because you're going to go right back to square one, right? Now, for number 3, we're going to look at down-regulating dopamine, which again is a driving factor force for motivation. If you find yourself where you're always listening to music, but you're not listening to it, so you're just there for the noise, or you're watching TV, but you're not actually watching it, you're just there for the noise, that is a pretty good sign of overstimulation. Your dopamine is overstimulated. You want to bring that down to baseline. You know, your dopamine has a baseline. You know, I think most people, we have all been up here, right? And boredom is going to be the number one thing that helps return you to baseline. There's kind of a nice study trick you can do where you'll just set a timer for 2 minutes and be bored. Just don't do anything. Okay? And then that's going to help return your dopamine to baseline, at least for that time. And then maybe you need to work on a project. Then you go and you make a rough draft. Emphasis on the rough, like it's a terrible rough draft. But it doesn't matter. Just write down all the things that you think applies to this project. And then you'll set a timer for 5 minutes, and then you will just actually work on it. And after 5 minutes, if you really don't want to, you don't have to, because at least you did 5 minutes, okay? There's 2 things that are gonna happen here. The first, well, 3 things. First, yes, the boredom will return you to baseline, to dopamine, because the human body hates boredom. There was an experiment where they had a choice. They could be bored, or they could push this button and shock themselves. Everybody shocked themselves. People hate boredom. They don't like to be bored, okay? So the boredom is going to make you be like, I'd rather do anything than be bored. Then you do the rough draft, and again, that's better than being bored, so it'll actually be pretty good. And the second psychological trick is that we don't like disorganization. So you're going to go back to this rough draft and be like, why is this in a terrible order? And you'll fix it naturally. And then after 5 minutes, because you probably won't finish the project in 5 minutes, the human body also hates unfinished project. So you're probably not going to work 5 minutes. You're probably going to work more than that because you don't like that it's disorganized. You don't like that it's unfinished, and you're going to want to do it. So that's kind of your typical study trick. Again, I'm sure it works better the more you utilize it, but that's what you want to do to bring your dopamine down to baseline. Because when your dopamine's up here, whatever's interesting you is way more interesting than everything else. And then normal things you have to do, they're so boring you don't want to do them. And then you get the procrastination part, right? So things that are more interesting to you, certainly a lot more, is referred to as a super stimuli. That means it is far more interesting than anything is in nature, and it shouldn't exist in nature, essentially, right? And it's going to make this huge spike in your dopamine. But remember that we are creatures of homeostasis. So as exciting and happy as you were, you got to drop down in depression because, you're up here and I got to come down here, and then you go back to baseline, right? And then, of course, as you imagine, as you expose yourself to super stimuli, you're constantly happy and depressed all the time. And it's just not a good place to be in, right? Now, dopamine is also a limited currency, which means that what you have, you want to use it for important things like your work and your hobbies, right? If you do what's exciting first, you don't want to do anything else that's not as exciting, okay? So for diet, for example, I usually have oatmeal, and there's a bran flake cereal, and then there's like usually 800 calories I can mess around with, and I usually pick junk food for that, okay? I should be eating the oats first because I hate that, and then the bran flakes second because I don't like that as much. 800 calories, I don't know, I'll probably get a pizza. As you can imagine, I probably just only want to eat the pizza, but if I do that, I don't want to eat the other stuff, okay? So I have to kind of make myself eat what I don't want to eat first, which is the oats, then the cereal, and then I can have whatever I really want at the end, right? No different than work. You have to do some work and you really want to watch this movie. If you watch the movie first, you're not going to want to do the work. If you do the work first and then you do the movie after, at least you got some work done, right? So that's what we mean when we say dopamine is limited currency. Make sure you do the important thing first, force yourself, and then whatever you really want to do, well, you can do that last. It's not a big deal. So of course, with the tapering method, you want to bring down dopamine raising activities like caffeine is one, caffeine is one, alcohol is another one. They both can be handled with the tapering method. Now, if you have the gene for alcohol addiction, you may want to go cold turkey on that depending on the level of addiction. Nicotine and drugs flood 10 times more the natural reward of dopamine. So as you can imagine, that's going to be incredibly depressing when you don't have your drug, right? So it'd be better to not have it at all. Again, depending on the level of addiction, you might be able to get away with tapering method. If it's extreme, then you have to go cold turkey. I know that sucks. Basically, the difference between the two is that with tapering, you never experience withdrawal because it's a slow tapering off. You never have to experience withdrawal. In most cases, you won't. When I got off caffeine, there was no withdrawal because I just slowly went off the caffeine, right? And I probably wasn't addicted either. Now, if you have a severe addiction, that's different. Tapering is not going to do nothing because you're always going to hit the same spot. So you have to go cold turkey. Then, of course, you get hit with the withdrawal, and that sucks. But there is a place for both, even though people say a lot of bad things about cold turkey, but it is necessary in areas. Finally, the last thing we'll talk about is, I think you kids call it nofap, which is a funny word for it, but I like celibacy. Celibacy is kind of the more appropriate term. Also, every culture in history has done this, and they've talked about it. So this is not like a new thing. Everybody knew about this. Africa, Asia, Europe, everybody knew about celibacy, and they talked about it and how great it was, okay? So with nofap, they're focused on the no masturbation, PMO, porn masturbation orgasm, right? But with celibacy, it even includes thoughts. So you can't even think about things like that. Okay, you can't even think about that stuff, right? It goes even further than that. And the reason why is because, as you can imagine, sexual stimuli is a high dopamine increase, right? Obviously. I think biologically speaking, that's like the number one reason we exist right? So of course you're gonna get a lot of dopamine. It really wants you to go and make a baby, okay? And there's a place for that when you want to get married and have kids like that, right? But outside of that, it would really just be a waste, right? The one book I talked about, I reviewed it before. It's probably not that good of a review, but it was The Science of Regeneration, okay? It's by Raymond W. Bernard, made in 1955. Now, I understand that might make you think certain things, but I mean, listen, this guy does a very good job of organizing all the information. I mean, you know, he presents it in a way that's higher than I would say a college class. And again, some things may make you question or think, but that's not a problem. There's no problem with questioning. Okay, you should always be questioning everything, right? But basically, what he's talking about is that he believes the sex hormones is what makes people strong and smart and youthful, all this stuff. And your body makes sex hormones, which is fine. It's no problem. You know, the problem is that when you're sexually excited, your body takes away all the sex hormones from your blood, puts it into your gonads because you're excited, right? You're about to have a baby. Is what it is. So you're giving up everything you have. The best sex hormones, the best lecithin, calcium, phosphorus. Same thing for the woman. And then if you're not actually having a kid, then what a waste. What a waste. You lost all of that, you know. And he talks about the conditions people have, like neurasthenia, which is just weak nerves, and memory, brain fog, stuff like that. You know, somebody that has too much sex, you can really tell that they're not there, like, you know, they're not alert, they're not as aware, right? And again, this book explains it better than I can. And because it's so old, you can actually get it for free. You don't have to pay for it. I bought it. I like books to refer to, you know, as information. But you could just like get this online as a PDF for free because it's so old. Like, you know, it's not a big deal. It's not a long read either. It's only like 45 pages. I mean, this size of text, but 45 pages. It's not that long of a read, but it's so jam-packed with information. You're not going to just breeze through the book, you know, unless you're just not reading it. But if you're actually understanding it, it's very good information, you know. And I'll tell you for sure, in regards to celibacy, that I think my life's improved a lot. You know, I mean, I was more than happy to just be like, well, there's a house, there's a car, and I don't need anything else, you know. Only through celibacy, I felt like, you know, maybe I should just get my college degree. You know, maybe I should work in my field of study. Maybe I should start a YouTube channel. You know, things just connect together for some reason. And again, I recommend it. Celibacy is good for you. Because anything outside of celibacy is nothing more than lust, right? And lust is nothing more than hedonism. And hedonism is pretty worthless if you think about it. So I think it's a pretty good idea. You know, if you have a problem with PMO or pornography, hey man, like that's almost everybody. You know, it's not new. There's nothing wrong with you in particular. Unfortunately, it's too easy to get. Now, with certain states, you know, South Dakota is one of them. They do ban one of the biggest porn sites on there, which is pretty good. But again, that's not every state in the country. You know, so you know, you'll have to kind of put stuff onto yourself. You know, you don't look up that stuff. Don't be thinking about that stuff. One thing I saw on the internet was the rubber band method. I like this, where you have a bad thought and you just smack the shit out of yourself. You know, that's great, just to kind of teach you not to think like that. You know, there's lots of things you can do. And of course, the subreddit's pretty good too. There's a subreddit for NoFap, so people talk about methods and strategies they use too. But no, I'm definitely a big fan of celibacy. I think it'll do a lot of positive change for you, depending on how bad it is. You know, I don't think you can taper off this. Some people will say so, but not everybody's as addicted to pornography as other people are. So if you are, then obviously I say you have to go cold turkey. If it's not that big of a deal, okay, fine. I still wouldn't mess with it. I'd still say cold turkey is the best way to go. And then with pornography too, you know, there's that sustained period of novelty of infinite content. So I mean, you could be at a 250% dopamine level for hours, and that's not going to help you at all. Okay, that's going to be really bad because remember, when your dopamine's up here, what do you got to do? You got to come down and crash for a long time too. So not good. There's a couple of other little things that I figured out was the hierarchy of needs. So if it's unmet, you're not really going to be interested in sexual excitement, right? If you're hungry or you're fasting, you're not thinking about sex. If you're cold, you're not thinking about sex, right? So those are some things you can do as well. Cold showers, big fan of cold showers, but that's sort of my list of things that I think is going to help you kind of get your dopamine in order and more to baseline. That way you've got more motivation to do things, to work on the projects that you want to. Again, tapering method if possible. If the addiction is too far, too deep, you'll have to go cold turkey. I know there's going to be withdrawal symptoms with that. That sucks. It's just the way that it is, okay? But yes, that's all I want to talk about today, just to kind of have a nice general start for you to work on something slowly over time. Please don't forget to vote for whichever gun you want me to shoot next at the next range report. And if you guys have any questions, comments, you can always leave it in the comment section below. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye now.
You learned martial arts! Martial arts, good!